All right. I think that there it is. Oh. Bit of a misfire on the email blast, but that'll work. It's this is the event. If you just tuned in, if you click the right button, you're here. We're talking about AI and productivity. We talked about with DocSend founder last week. We're talking about we have a demo day next week. So if you've been on the schedule with us before, thanks for tuning in again. If you're here for the first time, excited to introduce you to a great group of founders who know a lot about something that I think we all think about a decent amount now, which is not just AI, but AI and how it can like help actually take tasks off your plate, or productivity in general, which has been one of the big promises. So super excited to get into it. And as you know, if you've been here before, I'll kill a few minutes here as people stream in. On me, if you haven't met before, Sandhill Markets, we do a lot of these live events. We have a Luma page. We have a daily-ish newsletter. It's more like 2 times a week. And we have a big syndicate. We do early stage stuff. We do really late stage stuff, the way that a normal syndicate does, where we share exciting things and you get to interact with it. Much more importantly, some of the people that helped this happen. If you don't know Walter, if you don't know Soccer.com, it's worth checking out. They do an awesome job introducing us and to exciting founders and investors, and they think really hard about private markets generally. If you haven't checked them out before, you should. They're a big part of how we stay smart about this stuff. So check them out. Finally, great slide as always. Our guests, Samir from Heyday, AI Copilot that transform your document notes and conversation into quotes. I'll let them explain better, so I won't go too long. But Heyday is, and one of the cool parts about this panel is that everyone on this panel has been working in the productivity space for at least a few years. Samir, I think it's 3 years. I'll have them do it, but then I think 6 and 7 for Double and Tascade, who are the other companies I'll talk about in a second. So super excited about that. Samir, it's great to have him. They're focused on exec coaches. I'll let him kind of explain that a little bit more. And then next we've got Alice Default of Double. Default, it threw me off. There's a startup named Default at first. I was like, wait, I didn't think they were really AI. Double gives you remote assistance powered by AI tools. I've looked at Double. I've known about Double for a long time. Super excited to hear not only how Alice has been doing over the course of the last 6 years of building this company, but then how AI has supercharged it, not supercharged it. And again, she's been in productivity for a while, having been at Front before. And then finally, last but definitely not least, John from Tascade, pronounced correctly, which I messed up beforehand, but I got right this time. AI-powered team collaboration, including tasks and projects. So actually, and I'm interested to hear a little bit about how that's similar or not similar from like a Heyday, and obviously there's a lot of different companies in this space. So Tascade though has been in this space again for a while. I think I'm forgetting what year they were in YC, but as far as LinkedIn's concerned, they're about 7 years in. So really excited to. I'll leave the intros there. I think I've killed enough time. We'll start to pull up our esteemed guests, and we'll get into it. Hey, nice, John. New background. Love it. Looking good. Well, cool. I gave really horrible intros of each of you. I think the best way to start is to have you all to go around the room if you're up for it. To do a little bit of background on yourself, I think is awesome, and then a better explanation than I gave of what your business does and is focused on. And Samir, if you're game to kick us off, we can get into it.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks for inviting me. So yeah, I'm Samir. I went to school for machine learning and AI and electrical engineering and signal processing a long
Before
time.
it was cool. It was still cool then. No, now it's just
cool. I mean, yeah, it was still cool then. I was drawn to it because I would say I'm one of those engineers who likes engineering because it helps me automate things that I don't want to do for myself. And AI is like the ultimate tool for that. So it's always been something that I've been excited about. I've worked at big companies like Amazon, realized it really wasn't for me, even early on when I worked there. And then have worked at pretty much startups since then. I most recently I've been working on Heyday, which thank you, Adam, for introducing that. I can cover that a little bit more. But I also worked on a productivity startup before that too, also in using machine learning, but less so forwardly marketed with AI. So we have a lot of learnings about productivity and how to use AI, mostly how not to do things. So I can talk about that. But
Cool.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Alice, you want to keep it moving?
Sure. So I've been in the productivity space for almost 10 years now. Kind of got into it by chance, and I think once I was in it, I was like, this works well, and I'm very interested by just helping people get to the things that they really want to do on a daily basis, which doesn't include usually like project management and scheduling and all those things. I was the first non-tech employee at both Front, which is an email app, and Sunrise, which was a calendar app that got acquired by Microsoft. So built kind of email and calendar, and then went on to rebuild Outlook for a couple of years at Microsoft, mobile apps, and then left Microsoft because I was frustrated. One, from being in the corporate world, but that's like a different story. But two, also because I loved building productivity apps, but I felt like they weren't really making people more productive. Like there was still a lot of busy work. People were still not doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so kind of took it one step further by bringing a human in the loop to start Double. And so we're a remote executive assistance service where our assistants and our clients have access to AI tools. It used to be just productivity tools, and now it's AI and productivity tools to make just delegation more seamless. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm excited to explore that specifically, right? Where the difference between, and I have in my notes, I said cyborg, which I think maybe makes sense, but whether you're pure product or mix, and kind of how that goes, decisions around that. John, you want to keep us moving? Tascade.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm John Shea from Tascade. And I guess quick background on my side as well. Started building websites early days for Pokemon websites and gaming websites, just, out of school, thinking it was fun. And then throughout that journey, I guess startups originally started helping out folks, even setting up servers for Counter-Strike, gaming, and so on and so forth. But I think what really kicked off Tascade, and we did YC summer 19. So it was like the last batch that actually had an in-person demo day, was really the idea of, helping people collaborate across the world, because 3 co-founders were different time zones. And it was about creating a unified workspace where you can, chat, organize, and collaborate in real time together and really get things organized from start to finish. I think what really kind of changed the spectrum with AI is that it unlocked a lot of superpowers that instead of, working and collaborating and making sure you need your whole team with you, right, inside of our platform, the entire co-start problem just changed, because we always had video chat and collaboration and the ability to talk to your team. But now you can really just actually collaborate with AI, and the whole experience changed overnight. And I think that's where we double down on AI agents, the ability to not just use AI as an assistant, but how can I create a mini version of myself, or even build or train an agent with my own knowledge curated into it. So that really changed the entire spectrum of our workspace and the way that you use Tascade. But yeah, it's been a pretty crazy past year or so, and every day there's something new.
Yeah, well, I think that maybe is a good segue into one of the first questions of this kind of paradigm shift that we're living in, or at least kind of the ChatGPT moment, I think is how it gets referred to. Some of you were, I guess, before that. I would like to hear each of you kind of talk about how, let's call it the ChatGPT moment, has impacted or maybe not impacted what you were doing, right? What I think for some, what parts of it were a big shift, both internally and the way you're personally thinking about it, and what parts of it were, more hypey and less relevant to you. So Samir, at Heyday, again, you've been in this world since before whatever, the morning news was talking about ChatGPT, but now they are, right? So how did you see that? Did you feel validated? Were you like, I've been telling you guys, we're here, or I don't know. Tell me a little bit about that.
No, I would say the first reaction, I'm just going to be very honest, it was more of fear than it was of excitement. And then thankfully the lizard brain backed off a little bit. It was mostly like, oh, I've built my career on the skill set of like being able to create automated AI machine learning products. Most of the time people don't even know that that's how like AI, what is AI? Like it doesn't matter. It's like built like products that help people in a way that they can do more with less. But suddenly a lot of people can just like hit an API and get the same level of functionality.
All the things that you had been
like building
really
up
doing a lot of. The magic
exactly.
you had is like a little bit less magic maybe.
Right, exactly. So like selfishly that initial reaction made me a little bit fearful. Then obviously lizard brain backing off, I was more excited about how like there were so many new ideas coming in because the amount of people thinking about automation and AI like 100x or 1000x like basically within 6 months. And so that was amazing, just like the level of new ideas, the the just capacity of people increasing hardware investments in hardware, so things became cheaper. Like everything's just started becoming more easier and easier. So that's awesome. I personally, I've also seen that like I've been building ML products for a long time, and getting it right is really, really, really hard. And it's not just like the engineering piece of it. It's like actually understanding what you need to do for people. You can have like, you could just hire an assistant, but if you didn't direct that assistant to do the right things, they wouldn't actually, be effective. So it's sort of like similarly. And so I think a lot of people are figuring that out. If they do, let me know, because it's hard to get that right. And so I think a lot of people are figuring out that like with AI, it's really easy to build some cool magical like demos and toys, but how do you actually make it really truly useful for people is not so easy.
Yeah, it's like the management, and I'm interested to hear what Alice has to say about this, because I feel like you and like you've dealt with this a lot, like really specifically. But it's like AGI, like you still have to manage it. Like even if you have like you still have to tell them what to do, then specifically, and that's like really hard in a lot of environments. So Alice, you have, again, you were, and correct me if I'm wrong, but seven years into Double? Yeah.
Six. Yeah.
6. Okay.
6 years.
Was AI at all a part of the early vision, or was it something that like you became aware of after launching, and then how did that change in the course of the last couple of years?
I mean, I think it was always part of the vision, but in a very like long-term way. And I think like Samir, you were saying, like all of a sudden some people just came in and like started using tools that weren't available. Like we were those people, right? We always said, and kind of like, when you go raise money and you pitch and like, well, right now we're doing like a first version, but like soon we'll do AI. But it was kind of like always a faraway dream, because we're a small team, super resource constrained, and so we didn't have the resources to train our own model and to build it. And so for us, I think it was kind of magical in a way, because what we had been selling, like the super long-term vision that we had been selling to investors, to the team, to our assistants, to our clients, forever, suddenly became not easy. And like Samir, you said it really well. Like it's one thing to know what you want to do and then actually do it and actually provide value, but it became achievable, and we could actually like put our hands into it, just connect to a few APIs and start playing and starting pushing stuff to clients. So for us, it was really an amazing moment to live that. It was also for us, given the business model that we have, it involved a lot of change management, especially not on the client side, because I think on the client side, most clients are excited to use AI. Like it's something that like is great, but we also, our business is that we also have human assistants, right? They're all based here in the US, all super qualified assistants. And for them, AI is something that they can be afraid of. They're like, well, the way people talk about AI, it's going to replace my job, especially because everyone talks about AI assistants. And so for in their mind, it's a lot about like, I'm done. Like, AI is going to replace. And so we had a lot of pushback on the AI piece of like, I don't want to use AI. I'm a human. I want to do. And so I think for us, it's also been super interesting to do that change management with the assistant and say, we're not building AI to replace you. We're building AI to elevate you, for you to be able to do a better job and for you to focus on the things where you have a lot of value. And this is actually an assistant for you, right? And it's been super fascinating for us to see kind of our assistants get trained on the AI, understand what it can do, and kind of ramp up to using it now on a daily basis and really liking what it's adding to their day-to-day.
Yeah, interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but so Heyday, pure product, correct? Like, but product, but and then double mix, right? Augmented,
Yeah.
And in Tascade, back to pure product, correct? But and then more agent focused, right? This, and maybe you can explain that, John.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think going back a little bit on the question and
Yeah, sorry,
that ChatGPT moment as well. When we thought about that initial launch, the wow moment or the aha moment, I think that effect it had on people, it really was just communicating to everyone the power of UI, the power of product for mass adoption to happen. And the innovation, I think, was around the chat interface and the ability to see the streaming text as if though someone is typing to you. And this moment was kind of magical in many ways. When you thought about how LLMs were actually powerful and connecting a little bit on productivity, we always thought about, cascading tasks. Remember the name for Tascade,
Yeah.
and trying to help you break things down into smaller pieces by taking a chunk of information, try to organize it, and then this whole concept of building a second brain was around for a few years as well. But now you can dump all of that information into LLMs and help you organize. And the crazy part is you can actually dump it into a chat interface. It can do whatever you want it to, and it can output everything from like a flow chart, a mind map, a task list, an agenda. And that was kind of magical. This chat interface can actually do all of that for you and take all of the information and organize it and present it in different form factors in text. But yeah, I think, from our side, that is kind of like the aha moment of connecting the LLMs into our chat interface where you can chat with team, but you can chat with AI. And then of course, we also had the editing component of being able to create your task list, your to-dos, your structured notes, docs, and mind maps. So it kind of all worked out. And that was a bit of a aha moment for us, but we felt like we really just like piggyback off of the innovation, right? That came about. So
one quick kind of follow up on that side of it before I have a question about what AI is maybe not good at. But before I do that came up from what you guys were saying is what, from a team organizational perspective, right? If Double, I would imagine maybe you didn't have like an AI team before, and now the APIs like kind of act as that. But Heyday and Tascade, where you were involved beforehand, are there parts where you're just not working as much in a certain area of like the core tech, and you're on top of it more? Like, have there been, what organizational changes within the team have taken place on the back of the innovation? Is the maybe the more concise question.
Mine's probably the easiest because no change. Because
okay,
I mean, we were an AI company from the get-go, so basically, for the most part, it's like if we can get away with not training our own models, I guess that's like less work. But we still have a lot of people thinking about machine learning and AI
on top of it, accelerating what's available. So you're already So
or even what's the right way to use the available APIs? What's the right data to collect? That there's a lot of things that essentially having machine learning people is still pretty necessary in my head to do it well. And so our team composition hasn't really changed.
I guess maybe, but I guess have workflows of that team changed? I would imagine.
Yeah, to a degree. I think we can experiment a lot faster.
Yeah.
Just because you can get a sense of the capabilities of something like LMs. We primarily do most of our work in text, so we don't do much around the vision stuff. But in text, there's so many either open source LLM providers that we can just open up Grok or whatever to test out how would Mistral do on this, how would Llama do on this, how does GPT do on this, how does Claude do on this, and then we can kind of figure out like, okay, this approach to solving this problem can work. Like we're getting decent responses. And so then we can like double down on optimizing, as opposed to, pre these things being so available, it would be a lot of work for us to do like that first pass, like MVP test.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's just less, ability to move faster off of the,
Right.
I mean, just like, I feel like the story of software more generally.
Right.
Also,
Yeah, exactly.
like it's like just a step up now from where we were.
Yeah, you can kind of think of it as like, before AWS or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Your
Yeah.
own servers and to put up a basic website.
Yeah.
And like, so like those kinds of they're kind of step function changes along the way.
Yeah. Double, I'd imagine very different, right? 'Cause did you have internal? You didn't have any maybe before, and then.
So we've always had an engineering and product team, but mostly working on like building productivity tools. I think and we kept that, and basically they were working on just pure productivity tools like task management and stuff like that, and they all moved to AI. And right now, I think probably 80 to 90% of our resources are spent on AI features, and the rest is just maintenance. The thing that I found interesting, I'm curious if it happened at Cascade or A-Day, is in the role of engineers, like because it's so accessible now to use, like I think that was fine. The transition went well. We noticed a real change in the workload between PMs and engineers, and for us actually, because a lot of what we're doing is prompt engineering, the role of PMs actually has evolved quite a bit for us in the last year, where they're not just about kind of scoping out the feature and then doing Q&A and like figuring stuff out. Like they're actually building the feature because they're the ones who are owning the prompt piece of the feature. And so our engineers are basically just giving them a place to do that and iterate really quickly. And so the dynamic has changed quite a lot, where PMs are taking a lot more than what they used to, or like taking different things. And for us, that's been super interesting as well, especially with like constrained engineering resources, to be able to offload a lot of that stuff as well to product managers.
Yeah, interesting. Similar experience, John and Samir. Similar shift on the PM engineering roles.
Yeah, I mean, I think of myself as like a glorified PM in some senses, but the crazy thing is you mentioned about that, because the ability to start building prototypes faster, and even sending pull requests to the team myself and getting rejected by the CTOs, the co-founders, I was able to actually do a lot more than I was able to in the past. But also at the same time, the code quality might not be there, but you can really get prototypes out much faster with assistance. And that's going to get, crazier and crazier, over time for sure. But for our team, day one, it was mostly very technical on the product side. And even when we pitched to Paul Buchheit and Jared at YC Summer 19, we pitched real-time collaboration and organization, because our backend and the product was always around like a structured document that was collaborative. So we had our own algorithm for, OT, not CRDT. We did a lot of backend indexing in real time. So when LLMs came about, I think it was kind of lucky, because we just about wrapped up a lot of the pieces for the foundation and for the platform for Cascade. So we're able to really just transition and go all in and get everyone on board to dive deep into AI and LLMs and RAG and so on and so forth. But it's also super exciting, because again, there's like something new coming out every single day, and it keeps just building momentum for the team without you even having to do much, because it's just about trying to get the team to focus right on the right stuff. Yeah.
A question that I've been excited to ask, I think you all have a really great insight on it, is what have you seen AI been really good at, and what have you seen it not really be good at, right? There's lots of promises. It's really fun to think about the future where, it does everything really well or whatever. It's not where we are today. What have been, some surprising moments of like, wow, it does this better than maybe we even expected, and then this just isn't useful for this. I feel like Samir, you've probably been living that reality for a long time.
Yeah, my answer is probably not going to be as interesting. I'm more curious to hear from John and Alice, just because it's sort of like when you see your kid growing by an inch every day, like you don't notice them growing up, like it's like the grandparents like, oh wow, you've grown like a foot like last year. I kind of like, this has been my world, so I'm sort of like incrementally along the way. So
not super surprised, really. Like it's been a long time since you were surprised by
Yeah, because it's sort of like this is like the thing that I'm used to. Even like when ChatGPT came out, I was like, oh, this is an awesome interface for GPT-3, which we've been playing around with, but was too expensive for us to use consistently and blah blah blah. And so like it's more. So I'm curious to hear from Alice and John actually.
All right, Alice, maybe what was your experience?
So we use AI in our tools that are user facing, both on the client side, so to help with delegation, like refine a task, and then on the assistant side, obviously for task execution. And I definitely think that we had super high hopes on the assistant side of like, oh, AI is going to be able to execute on a lot of things, which it's not. And there's actually a lot of what our assistants do on a daily basis that AI can't help with right now. Probably won't be able to help short term, and maybe very long term, it's going to be able to help. Obviously, all the like calling people or like reaching out to multiple people at once, like all the more complex tasks. The tasks that it's been absolutely amazing for and that our assistants love using it for are everything that's related to writing. Obviously, those are like language models, so like drafting, content review, like producing content, writing emails. Really great at classifications. Our data became so more accurate because now like whenever a client puts in a task, like we're able to we automatically tag it based on AI, and we can like do way better reporting than what we used to do. Really not great at for us at everything that's numerical values. Like we realized that it was really, really bad at estimating how long a task is going to take. So if a client is like, oh, can you book me a flight to so-and-so, it will give very different numbers multiple times. And for us, the key learning here is it's actually, at the end of the day, at least for us and from our experience, the AI, like the output of the AI is only going to be as good as what you input into it. And right now, both our clients and our assistants are not great at those inputs, right? And like, it really, even if you are familiar with AI, even if you've used it before, like knowing what to share and what not to share and what's going to be relevant is still super hard. So obviously there's a lot that we can do on our side with like automatically giving it content. But I think that's the thing for us that is the biggest thing to focus on right now is how do we make sure that that input is facilitated in the best possible way.
And that input being like the prompt being used, or the data it's pulling on, or both?
It's the prompt, it's the personal context of the person so that the response can be linked to them. It's kind of the expectations. I think people usually have super high expectations of the AI, but if you give it like a really bad input, then it's not gonna figure
it out for you.
Yeah, it's not gonna figure it out. And so I think that kind of like expectation setting as well, like what are you actually going to look for? I think for us is like the things that we're working on right now the most.
Yeah, just to like inject for a second. One of the things that I think is to be figured out is like for all the folks who are new and using APIs. Sorry, Alice, not to be like, but more just like, you're getting a lot of value from the initial use case, but then there's like the classic things that people probably associate with AI or machine learning, even subconsciously, is like, if I give it feedback, it will get better. The problem is like if you're using public APIs, like you really probably aren't actually making anything better, which was like a default thing. If you're building your own models, you're training your own models, like by default, that just becomes data to like make like for the new retrain of the model, it will get better. And so like one of those, it's like this kind of figuring out like what the inputs are, and then it's like, well, having an approach to, well, how do we make this better? When do we make this better? Can we have user interaction? How do we incorporate user interaction into making it better? That's like not quite, the APIs are not there to like make that quite easily usable yet.
John, how about you? What's I guess you mentioned the ChatGPT like being a big kind of step up and the team kind of rallying around it as well. But have there been, I don't know, parts that have been less than, like, would have been a down moment of it, or is it all great? Is it just all the new? Is it like, have you been disappointed, I guess, by any of the releases? Like, has there been a exuberance and then like it's good, but it's not like that good? What's been that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is funny because every single time there's a new model coming out, people have different kind of opinions about it. You try to benchmark it, but ultimately it's very hard to say exactly, what is a step up, when you're interfacing with a lot of these from a human angle. But I guess starting on a positive note, obviously LLMs, AI has been great for everything from research to creative writing to all the way down around productivity and turning a lot of context data and organizing it right for you and turning it into things that's more actionable. But on a more like human level, in terms of AI, I think it's kind of surprisingly good at knowing about yourself. So if you curate the right amount of context knowledge, you pass it to LLMs, you ask questions, and even not just from like a productivity standpoint, but from a mental health therapy, trying to understand yourself better, it actually gives you very good answers in terms of understanding who you are and the problems you're going through and suggesting the next step. So there's kind of scary moments where you're just talking to the AI and you have a really good thread going on and you pass it the right context. You're like, wait, this thing knows who I am. It's scary. But of course, and this goes back to the point. I think it's only going to get better. But of course, the limitation with the context window, of course, the memories, the long-term build up, it's still a lot of limitations there today, but that's only going to get better. There's definitely a lot of letdowns when you think about agents and tool calling and the ability to do task completion, right? Because there's so many different tools, and if you want to limit it to just a set of really strong use cases, there's not that many today. But I do believe that's going to change, and today it's not there yet for sure when it comes to completing actual tasks for you outside of just text to text. Yeah.
So within that, right, and you mentioned kind of the slope of, right, let's assume that this momentum will continue, like the LLMs continue to get better, in a variety of ways. Maybe they get better at the task completion, maybe they get even better at the things they're already doing. How do you all think about value capture on top of that? Like, you all sit in these kind of, you have, and we'll talk about pricing and how people pay you and how people use you, but I feel like the common thing there has been like proprietary data or context. Like, how do you think about, like, let's say that the LLMs keep getting better and better and kind of are more generalized. When do they like eat into the value that you're providing? Do they not? Are you always on top of them in a way that you think allows you to capture the value, like whatever, defensively? Maybe this is kind of an investor question, but of AGI gets here, right? Why do people still use Heyday or Double or Cascade? Like what, and maybe that's a hard question, or maybe that's a dumb question.
I think I have like really strong opinions about this.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume anyone who's built, I feel like if you're building in this, you have to, right? Like, you can't just be like, oh, I don't know, we're gone. Like, that's
and I mean, I continuously get questions around like, oh wait, like, is ChatGPT just going to do this or whatever? Like, it's very possible. Like, there's going to be like features built in, but that's more like taking the route of a super app, that does everything. I just don't think that. I mean, they could try to do it. I think it's going to be really, 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 really hard. So, as in, like, you probably need to get close to an AGI to actually, and I don't think we're actually anywhere near AGI, by the way. Like, people talk about that, we're just nowhere near it. Like, we've built like phenomenal memory pattern matching engines that can do a lot of things because we fed it a lot of information, and it can see multiple levels of patterns. But once you get into like zones where you're trying to get it to do something that it's never seen a pattern of, it's just like not going to do well. And that is, I don't know how human brains do it, but we're pretty good at it. And so that's probably like the big thing. So one of the things that I think, when you're trying to build an AI, like if you're trying to build both the super app and the API that allows people to build meaningful, specialized things, you can't really be both at the same time. Like, just like as a comparatively small company, OpenAI, and secondly, like, I think that that's where antitrust will probably, like, if they actually pull it off, like, I don't know how that goes, but that's like Microsoft's like saying Internet Explorer is the only browser on Windows kind of level, or Apple getting sued now for, I don't know, like, when if you're trying to be both the platform and the only app on top of it, like, you'll probably get in trouble. I don't know if you'll pull it off, and just the type of like specialized use cases that most people actually have to deal with. It's like similar to saying, like, you have like the smartest 12-year-old on the planet, like IQ 300, whatever, and then you say, do my VC job for me. Like, it doesn't matter how smart that kid is. Like, they're not going to just like immediately jump in and be able to do your job. So like, you have to like train it to do that. Is OpenAI going to figure out how to train every single job on the planet? I don't think so. So like, it being a platform just makes so much sense. Like it extracts a tax on the ability or whatever, all these like providers, similar to like, would you have said AWS can build every app on the planet because they have the ability to scale all the servers on the planet, whatever. Like that, yeah. I think it's like probably on us to figure out how to actually solve people's problems and how to use AI, and like it's different problems for different things. And so anyway,
it makes a ton of sense, man. I hadn't heard the monopoly take before, but I think that's an interesting one. Even if they could,
that's so far away though. Again, I just don't.
Of course. Yeah. Alice, I feel like similar for your in terms of how you think about it, in terms of like the LLMs continuing to get better. It just allows your assistants and ultimately your clients to be served better within your platform.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, the idea is to like, they're probably, well, I mean, always is a really intense term when you're talking about startups. So, but at least on the short to medium term, we'll have humans in the loop, right? That's the big value prop. And we really don't think right now that just AI can do the type of work that our assistants are doing, because again, there's a big element of reviewing stuff, of like taking the phone from time to time, of like coordinating a lot of different things, like actually executing on tasks that ChatGPT right now can't execute on. It can give you recommendations, it can share next steps, but it can't actually like log into your bank account and make payments, right? Which an assistant can do with the right accesses. So I think for us, that's what we're thinking about right now, is just like, how do we leverage AI to kind of complement our assistant and make sure that the quality is more consistent, that they have all the like superpowers of AI, that like know everything at all times, like never make it like be super consistent in terms of the quality, but not really about how do we just make just ChatGPT be the ultimate assistant for our clients. But more kind of like, how do we find the right balance between the two?
Yeah. John, similar?
Yeah, I think the scary part, again, touching on LLMs too.
A lot of scary stuff from John.
I know. I mean, when you take out your laptop too, when you start thinking about MacBook Pros and then even pulling up your MacBook Air, I think a lot of people don't realize that you can run, Mistral AB on your machine locally, and you can actually interact with AI and LLMs. And these are all open source and available today. And that's only going to get better. And the closed source ones like GPT-4, moving to GPT-5, I mean, the capabilities are only going to improve. So the way I think we see it is to really position Tascade in a way that whatever we're setting up today, whether it's the multi-agents, letting the customers actually customize the workspace, or setting up the automation and orchestration layer, right, to connect with our platform, all of those are only going to improve when the next leap happens, right, with the LLM. So in a sense, we want to really partner with them the long term. But of course, in terms of training your own LLMs or fine tuning, a lot of those things are possibilities, and it's not necessarily something you have to utilize third party as well, especially if you have a lot of customers already today, a large user base, and you can actually just observe the actions people are taking and try to make that into even your own LLMs. Like, I'm sure you've seen like the Rabbit R1's large action model, but if you actually have a customer base, user base, a lot of these things will become more and more possible. Yeah.
I mean, our product Heyday basically does this. We integrate with everything from your like browsing history, your emails, your conversations, everything, and like help you achieve certain tasks. The thing is, I still don't think like if you just like take that information and then like put in anything more complicated, if you just want to chat with our system, it can do basic tasks very well. And then for our workflows that are very optimized for the use cases that we're working on, we've done a lot of work to train based on what we know are the actual things that people in our persona are actually looking for. And it takes a lot of work to get that to the point where people just trust the AI, because again, it turns out it's cool a lot of times, but it's not the type of thing that you just let run by itself. Like it's not like the same thing as me having a chief of staff or an executive assistant that I can just like say, oh, cool, I know you can take care of this. I don't even have to think about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think a good follow up to this, in the value capture and like the owning the ultimately like the customer relationship, and I personally agree with that, like the platform and then building on top of it. You use the example of like the 12-year-old, like even if the 12-year-old becomes a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old or 22-year-old, they're all still like general. It's like the liberal arts education, and like can you do this really specific thing though still, like, and that takes training. Even in the human context, you're an awesome history major, clearly smart, whatever. You still have to show up to your job and get trained to do your job. Just figure it out on the fly or whatever.
And one of the issues with LLMs, and I'll keep harping on this, like the way that these work right now, they're basically like either they can find multiple patterns and just like squish them together to do something that looks really cool, but like innovative new things like new music, new literature, new styles, like rap isn't going to be written like in the 80s by an AI. Like that stuff just won't happen from an AI. So like if you're working on even at the 20th percentile of novel stuff for your industry, like an AI by itself is not going to be able to replace you.
But yeah, back to the kind of the value capture aspect of it. And so I think that pricing has been, and we talked about it before a little bit, and it was in the kind of pre-show notes, big kind of hot button thing recently. I feel like it was happening before AI. There was definitely this, per seat versus usage conversation happening before the ChatGPT moment, and then it's been accelerated in I think a lot of ways because of I don't know, just maybe it's just because software is more accelerated more generally. How are you all thinking about pricing? And I know that you probably have some questions for each other as well, and obviously different kind of human versus pure software or whatever. But in terms of in the product, has this shifted? Is it like an ongoing thought that everyone's having? Samir, you can we'll keep the loop going.
So we're probably earlier in our life cycle as a business than Taskade and Double, so I'm very curious to hear about it from y'all. And we've been the Heyday product up until recently has been a individual AI assistant for knowledge workers focused on executive coaches and consultants, but we've started working with like consulting firms. And once you start going from I'm powering the productivity of an individual and they're paying me for it, to we're trying to help an entire firm be more productive and efficient, the per seat license becomes weird in my mind, in that like we may actually be helping the consulting firm do more with fewer people. And so therefore are we like,
there's a weird incentive there, like
exactly
right? More seats, but it's a productivity app, so you should need less seats, and then that's
right, exactly. Like, and so like that's one of those tensions where we're still figuring it out, and we're not sure exactly how that should be, or if there are any ideas that we should be considering.
Alice and John, any ideas for Samir?
I mean, we're in a similar situation of not having incentives that align, and I think that's like a lot of companies are going to be in this situation. For us specifically, actually building AI is like shooting ourselves in the foot, because right now our pricing is not even per seat; it's already per usage, but it's like the hours of our assistants. So
like a human,
they pay packages of hours, and so actually the more AIs our assistant use, the less hours they work, and so the less our clients pay. So our assistants are not incentivized to use AI because then they're paid less hours, and they're paying less. So the entire model, like our pricing model, is broken. And so what we're working on right now is to figure out pricing based on the output. So based on, you're paying actually for the result of the task. Where it gets complicated is, again, on those expectation setting of like what is exactly success for a specific task, and maybe what success is at the end of the task is not what it was at the beginning, because a lot has happened. So that's where we're spending most of our time. We don't have the solution yet, but we are. What we're trying to do is be as descriptive as possible about like what does the client want. So really working on those expectations and then giving a price for that. Like, would you be willing to pay $30 or $40 or $50 for this task to be done. And then the client can say yes or no. And then we pay on the same side the double, like a fixed price for, or the assistant a fixed price for the task. And so they're incentivized to use AI because the faster, like the price doesn't change if they work 10 minutes or 30 minutes on it. So they're incentivized to use AI. So our goal right now is to kind of realign everyone's incentives, but it is, it's tricky, right? Because it is not something that we're used to, and it adds a lot more work upfront. And so adding a lot more friction upfront.
To defining the task correctly.
Define the task, ask the client, are they ready to pay, without even seeing kind of the quality of the work. And like, I think it opens kind of a cans of worms, but it is necessary for us to figure it out.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's less, it's like seat usage outcome is like the full life cycle. And we're almost accelerating through usage to outcome, because in the world, like, you don't want actually lots of usage and that applies productivity is a very clear example. Like, you don't want, whatever, Twitter, LinkedIn tracking, like how much time are people, I just saw some notification about like LinkedIn's launching games to like get their usage up for like be on the app more. And it's like the absolute opposite spectrum of productivity type. But yeah, so usage, like, so almost accelerating through that to like, what do you want the outcomes to be? But in any hiring, and I've, worked with contractors and I've worked with assistants and stuff, where defining the thing that's happening ends up being like such a huge task if you do it really well, and then it can change and all that stuff. But
side note on a related story from a long time ago, which might be still important to us, is like when Google was first like starting out, like Larry and Sergey didn't really want to build a company, and so they were looking to sell the Google technology into a company. And at the time, one of the biggest search engines was Excite, and the Excite team had the Google team on, and there was some like product manager, CPO type person who looked at the Google data, and they were like, people spend so little time on the Google search pages. We're not going to be able to, like, they were like focusing in on the fact that like people would come to Google and then leave right away.
You type it in, you press the link, you're gone, you're off the website. How are we making money here?
And it's like compared to Excite, like people would be like going through multiple pages of Excite results, and like, not understanding that engagement there was actually a very bad thing.
Yeah. Like retweet. Yeah, you have to. Engagement's not always, especially in productivity, feels like the extreme example of this, right? Where, John, how are you all thinking about it?
Yeah, and I think we've just covered on some good points around reducing friction, because that was always the hardest thing to think about. We've experimented with 3 different plans, 4 different plans, even 5, and then you cut it down to 2, and we noticed the less friction. It was always the better kind of choice, especially when Tascade is a freemium product and you go after many SMBs and business owners. And of course, going back to productivity, the best way probably you can charge folks is by saying how many hours you save them, or usage based around task completion. But when you ask the customers, they say that's what they want, but then at the same time they don't want that, because you're making them do math, you're making them think how much you're going to pay, right? It's like they want that, but they don't want that. So it's very tricky.
A billing page with like a calculator in it, like
exactly, like the slider. We tried that, like slide things up, down. But the way we ended up doing it is kind of simpler, where your usage goes up as you add more seats. So it's a share pool of a lot of the resources, and this share pool increases the more seats you buy. So it scales nicely with your team, within your workspaces, together in a unified kind of subscription. But to touch on like the usage of knowledge as a piece for agents, and tying back to the fact that I do think AI assistants, copilots are not that great today. But the point being, LLMs are always going to be very generalist, right? They know everything, but they don't know anything super well. And the way that we've spoken to our customers is that, in order to build the best expert for like a specific area, they are the ones that know it best, because they already know what knowledge to feed it and to curate it. And then they actually come back and say, this is crazy, like this is even better than myself. But you look at the stuff they uploaded into the knowledge or into the agents that they created, it's insane. Like they know exactly what to put in, whether it's the docs, the stuff they've written, their project context within Tascade. So yeah, in a way, even if LMs do get better, it's still up to the human to train it and to curate the knowledge, and then you can create a set of experts to work with you. And then how do you monetize on that, right? Maybe the usage should be around knowledge, not about the output or not about the task completion, but how much knowledge you can store. And you see that a lot with companies that specifically target, building out the rack systems and so on and so forth today. But anyways, just kind of jumping around a bit.
I think, John, you mentioned maybe a Pokemon path of building some Pokemon. Was it? I've always whenever someone brings up the word training gets thrown around a lot, and as someone who grew up with Pokemon, I just go back to walking around my Game Boy or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've always, because you don't know what it doesn't know, right? There's this aspect of building on the generalists and training, and I want to be able to feed something to my LLM. Right, hey, this now. I know it's the Matrix is maybe the more grown up visualization of it, right? Where they download Kung Fu and stuff like that. Because there's an aspect of knowing what your LLM does know and doesn't know, and all of the demos and stuff make it feel like it knows everything. You watch a demo of a ChatGPT app, it's oh, it knows everything. It's a perfect. And the reality that we're all kind of dealing with, right, is that it doesn't really. It knows a little bit about everything, but then if you're gonna really get deeper,
it actually knows nothing. All it knows is
Samir. Samir's the worst. It's always the guy who's really been deep in it for the longest. Who's they don't know shit. I don't know what everyone's talking about.
It's repeating patterns in a way that makes sense.
Yes. To move on from my Pokemon reference, I think a cool question, for all of you who have both been in the AI space for a long time and also have been building companies for a long time, there's been a surge in and there's so much of it that's hype, and it's one of those classic moments where you, as an investor or as a founder, and I have friends on kind of both sides of the table thinking about the space, what's the right thing to do? What's the thing that you can raise money for? What's the thing that is actually the longstanding or something that actually is real future potential? Is the ground shifting so quickly? How do you decide? You don't want to miss it. When you all look out from your, you have established things that you're doing, right? And you were doing it before the chat. You made those decisions before, and this is kind of happening outside of you. When you look into the AI hype bubble or whatever it might be, and you think about maybe building something else, or someone asking you, what do you think is really interesting to be working? If you weren't working on this, what would you be working on? Are there things that come to mind for you all there? Or are there things that you see? And again, putting aside the fact that you're all working on what you're most excited about, by virtue of, how you spend your time on a day-to-day bit, but what's maybe in second place? Is there anything that is interesting to you all, or that you see other people doing that you're that maybe wasn't possible when you first started your company as well?
It's a great question.
Give me your startup ideas. Give everyone your best startup idea.
I mean, the point of being just text to text, and then of course the evolution of text to voice, now text to music, text to video, that's only going to get better. But the ability to go from audio to video, or going from different mediums, compatibly, that is going to become real as well. So yeah, but we're not quite there yet. But if you were to build today, you want to build for the future, right? And you will want to build knowing that that's going to get better. But video is very exciting in some senses, and of course with the recent kind of wave with the audio, right, and the music startups. Imagine having that as a kid growing up. That would have been just insane.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's so yeah. So moving away from text to text, and I think there's a lot of actual product experience. There's a lot of innovation that'll have to happen in terms of how you interact with software more generally. I feel like I make fun of it on Twitter sometimes, but the Naval's new thing, where it's a social media, it's kind of like Clubhouse-y, but it's pure dictation. It's meant to be I feel like there's lots of experiments happening in that space of how we interact with software, with social networks, whatever. Samir and Alice, any thoughts come to mind?
Yeah, I think for me, it's all in this area of how do we free up time for humans to spend on
just can't get off of the productivity train.
Yeah, but it's not about helping humans be more productive all the time. It's about how can we help humans spend more time on literature, music, fun, sports, whatever. And so what are high value things that we do as humans that can be automated, that's or what will significantly improve quality of life. So an area where I think is very underserved, but is super valuable from an AI perspective. It's like only recently people are thinking about it, is like drug development, therapeutics. Like, what can we do to like have AI accelerate research into treatments of any kind, longevity, all these kinds of things. Like, that'd be super interesting to me. Agricultural development. So like, how can we make good food that's environmentally sustainable? So I want my beef, but I also don't want to like destroy the planet while everyone gets beef. So there's got to be a way we can figure this out. How can we like leverage AI to like accelerate those kinds of things? Those are the things that I would probably spend more time on. But this is more fun.
I don't have any other story, but it is because I'm kind of like that. It's like,
Good. I like it.
No, I'm the type of person that can only think about one thing for like that intensity. But I think one thing I do have, and I sometimes feel from the VC world, is like this thing of like, oh, now that we have AI, we have to think about all the usage of AI. And to me, like at the end of the day, AI isn't an endpoint; it's like a tool. And maybe Samir, you're going to be like, whatever.
No, I agree.
You're gonna be like, but for me, it's like, you know, we it's a good tool, like, but it's like it's a hammer, right? And it's like when we're thinking about like what are the startups we can do with AI, it's like you have a hammer and you're going around your house trying to find if you have a nail or not, and like maybe you have, maybe you don't, like you don't know. I think for me, at the end of the day, it's more about finding the problems that interest you, and then what's going to sell to the clients. But clients don't really care about AI. They don't use something because it has AI or it doesn't have AI. They use something or an app or a product or a service because it fits a need that they have. And if AI makes it better, then great. But if it doesn't need AI, then maybe it's fine to use apps and services and tools that don't have AI if it still fits your need. And so I think it's for me, it's like, obviously AI opens so many new possibilities, but I think launching, as I'm thinking about like, or anyone thinking about launching a new company, it's always about like, what's the problem? Like, what's the need that you're trying to solve? And then again, if AI can be a tool for you to do it faster, better, more efficiently, like let's go. But it's not an end in itself.
Yeah. I think, although I will now defend the VC for a second. Feel like it's probably less like a hammer and more like the invention of fire. Like it's like a pretty, it's like the equivalent to like the internet. Like, you know,
sure.
People are just like more aware of this like monumental change that is now available for us technologically, but it's still like more like a hammer than it is like the all-encompassing solution to everything. Yeah. And so I think it's like, oh, cool. What are new things we can do with fire? Like we can cook food. That's great. That's awesome. But like, not everything has to be about fire. Like, there are other things you need to do that didn't involve fire.
And it's almost, I think that like, it's not that the world's problem set has changed, right? You kind of mentioned some of the big ones, right? Of like disease and food, and like those things are still the same thing. Now we have new tools that make it, or productivity. I'll put that in there as well. Both from what you get done at work and how that frees you up to enjoy your life more. Haven't changed. And it's interesting, but it's the why now is super compelling because it's like, oh, we're now in this new paradigm, and it almost overshadows other slides, right? The problem solution slides, and then the why now AI slides, like, double bold-faced whatever.
But I think even like the reference to prototypes before, like for PMs to be able to use AI to build that's very similar to, creating a sound clip or creating a song today, or even video generation, right? It's very good to get to that prototype level, but not so much to like the end product. However, if you are building a startup around building a community of folks to actually come together, learn and create, it could spark a ton of new ideas and creativity, from the prototype angle, but applying to multiple categories, right? Everywhere. And there's so much you can do, and just follow your passion and kind of like, the areas that interest you, whether it's Pokemon or gaming or, music, entertainment. I think it's like way beyond just text to text. I think that's the point I was trying to make. But yes, still quite exciting.
Yeah. Well, we're at the hour here. I know that you all have startups to run, so I won't push it too far. Or maybe you have AI do it. No, I think we've determined you can't actually.
If we can, it'd be great.
Yeah. Thank you so much I really enjoyed it. I know that I'm sure the audience did, will be, cutting up the recording and getting, clips out and all that stuff. So thank you again. And I'll put up this slide to thank Sakura and Walter, our friend Walter. And I hope to see you all soon.
Looks like there was like one big question that came in. I don't know if
I saw. I mean, I can read it off. I think we covered it mostly.
Okay.
If not all the tests. Or I'll just read it out maybe. How about this? The difference between the adoption of... I scanned it for bad words already. I appreciate that, Samir. Usually we don't do it, but it's helpful.
No, I was just like...
Yeah. The difference... Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Or maybe... And I can put it up on the screen. It's too long really to be helpful. But you guys... Anyone who's reading this, you can read it on the side. And if you have an answer to it, go for it. There's still required human name is too soon. I'm just going to start asking that.
AI summarized TLDR. Let's go. What is it? Restream needs that feature.
Yeah. The general question is like, can it do everything? Like, what happens if it? I'm trying to condense it. Big or small, launching generated power. On a broader level, innovators don't quickly create enough new jobs. It's a human labor question. I personally don't. I think that, and I'll channel some Samir here. Like, I don't see that happening really anytime soon at all. And I feel like it's like everyone's like, we had this ChatGPT moment, and then everyone went like, well, what happens when we don't have anything to do, right? And it's like, I don't know when that happens really. Samir and I
think there's a lot of industries that are at risk at being automated away, and it's going to be great, but great for the world, but not great for the people, unfortunately, because there's no like retraining or how do we affect, like, let's say the trucking industry is going to be essentially like
bringing stuff from point. If you're a truck driver and now we have,
that's going to get automated in the next 10 years, 100%. That's 5% of the US like job market.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's a huge logistics and transportation is a huge market. And so like, I don't know. No one's thinking about. I get really annoyed with like the fact that like people think about existential AI risk before like the like things staring us in the face where there's gonna be disruption, not the kind where it's just replacing high knowledge workers and things like that, but it's replacing a lot of things that humans needed to do, but maybe we don't anymore. It's actually good for us because those people could probably work on things that are more interesting than driving a truck or going into the mines, right? Like those are jobs that why should we have humans do them? But it's also not something that our government is really doing a great job supporting the transition from.
Yeah, but I mean, thinking about just autonomous driving, right? When you think about Tesla FSD, it's gotten so good, but obviously still problems. If you're in SF, you see Waymo going around, you ride it a few times. The first time you're really scared, then by the third time you're like, wait, this is actually pretty good, and it's a lot faster than even waiting for Uber to pick up sometimes. So it is kind of scary in that sense. When you think about knowledge workers, task completion, autonomous agents, the crazy part is it will inevitably replace jobs, like you said, but maybe not so much like the expert level, more like the internship level, right? Not some like full-time employee that you're replacing. But when you're talking to customers that are running businesses or small business owners, if we do help them save time or save resources because they don't have the budget to hire 10 people, they can hire 3 and then the rest can delegate to AI. That's a win, I think, for our side, right? But the trucking point is also valid. That is kind of crazy. And it will free them up to do other things, but some people will be affected, right? Inevitably. So
Alice, I feel like you kind of touched on this really specifically, right? Because I feel like the AI assistant, and I think that what you said is where I end up thinking about it, and I think it's kind of what Samir touched on as well, is like augmented, right? There's still, you do different tasks, right? And I think that the general kind of truckers now, yes, new jobs, but the whole technology stack has shifted, so now there's new things available. Like there's also new industries and new things to do, and I feel like Alice, I would assume that you feel like that more broadly as well.
Yeah, for me, it's about it's not really about jobs, and I think we've heard all this like everywhere, but it's not about like jobs being, at least in our industry, obviously like truck drivers definitely, but I think in our industry it's not about assistants not existing anymore. It's just assistants who don't use AI being replaced by assistants who do use AI. And I think it's, for me, it's the, when I talk about assistants, usually people have this image of like the secretaries in Mad Men, you know, like typing away. And I'm like, well, they were on typewriters in the day where we invented computers, and they could type faster, and like they didn't have to like post things because emails was there. There wasn't like no more secretaries. It's just that their job evolved quite drastically, and they started doing a lot more things because there's always things to do. And I think for us, that's the way we see it, of like the role of the assistant still being needed, but the task and the scope that they do being radically different, because they're, you know, focusing on things that have that human value. And the low-level tasks being automated, which at the end is good for everyone, right? It's good for a client who's paying less. It's good for the assistant who's doing more high-value tasks. Like, it's a win-win, but it has to be managed well for sure. Like, it's a fine line.
Or more people can afford assistants, right? It's like, you know, like.
And then, as John said, then you're powering more businesses to run and not completely die. And like, it's just a very short, like, it's also like, but it's not the case for all industries. Obviously, I think there are industries where jobs are just going to be automated away.
Yep.
Well, I think that's what we're ending. I think that's what we're ending on. Hey, well, you know, truck drivers that use AI, though, you know, secretaries that use AI get replaced. Yeah. Maybe that's what needs to be happening. Anyways, thank you for staying over. Thank you for everyone for asking the questions and for engaging. For the over 100 people that got here, so that's fun. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.